In today's show, the Trailblazers split a pair of games over the weekend, and Scoot Henderson is playing the best basketball of his career. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, talk about a pair of games over the weekend. Blazers lose to the Rockets on Saturday evening and bounce back and beat the Bulls on Sunday night. Scoot Henderson's playing the best basketball of his career. Shaedon Sharpe came off the bench on Sunday. We got a whole lot to talk about. Let us get into it. I want to celebrate Scoot. I want to talk a little bit about Shaedon Sharpe's move to the bench, and we're going to focus it around these two games, but I'm going to try to make these brief. Sometimes fast recap in the West with two games is a lot, but we'll get into it, and then we'll get into everything else you need to know. Blazers lose to the Rockets on Saturday evening, 125-103, their 14th 20-point loss of the season. They're now an even 14-14 when they lose, half of them by at least 20 points. When they go south, Antarctica, y'all. It was a 1-point game at halftime. Blazers down 2, and then the first quarter down 1 heading into the break, and the Rockets just turned it on and played at an intensity level and a talent level the Blazers couldn't handle in the second half. Portland's playing this game with no Denny Avdia. He was not yet back from a sprained ankle that kept him out. It's no DeAndre Ayton. Missed that game with calf injury, but Jeremy Grant returned to the lineup. And with Jeremy Grant's return to the lineup, Scoot Henderson moves to the bench. Didn't slow down Scoot Henderson's production at all, but the Rockets are just better than the Blazers, and I think they turned it up enough in that third quarter that it felt like the game was pretty much over. Delano Banton hit a 3 by the third quarter buzzer, and that made it a 13-point game heading into the fourth, but like without that, they're down 16, and that's exactly what it felt like. It's like, yeah, you're down 15, you're about to lose. Never got closer than 11 in the fourth quarter, and the Rockets cruise 125-103. More about that game in a little bit. Perhaps I am poisoned by. I'm going to talk big picture stuff, but I want to talk about this game briefly. Perhaps I'm poisoned by watching the Blazers all the time, that they lose 125-103, and my honest takeaway was like, no, it's fine. I did not come away. I talked to a friend of mine after the game who also watches all of them, or many of them, very closely, and their reaction was like, that was horrendous, and I was like, really? So perhaps my brain is a little bit poisoned by a little too close to the situation. I came away just unmoved by the game against the Rockets. I thought the Blazers got out-talented. I think Jeremy Grant didn't look great in his first game back, but that's to be expected. He missed 3 weeks. I didn't think that I don't think Anthony Simons was particularly good, but he wasn't terrible. He was certainly better than this scoreless 30-minute performance he'd had the night before. I thought Shaedon Sharpe was kind of bad, but like in a way that young players are sometimes kind of bad. I thought he had been much worse in the prior game than he was against Houston. I thought he just kind of he maybe took some bad shots against the Rockets. And so like the game ended, they lose by 20. They lose by 20 all the time. Like I said, 14 of their 28 losses are by 20 points. This is what they do. I was unmoved by it. I really was. I didn't think that this was like a hot takey, fire everybody, launch them into the sun type of game. Again, perhaps I'm poisoned by this, but I kind of felt like they played fine and they just lost because they weren't as good. And I am slow, and this is maybe my personal approach. It's like I won't really criticize them for lack of talent. I won't. It's like and perhaps I'm lower on some of the Blazers players than you are, and that's my the lack of talent excuse here. But yeah, I was unmoved by that game against the Rockets. But the Blazers, the good thing and the bad thing about it is that was the midway point of the season, and less than 24 hours later, they had to play another basketball game. 7 o'clock tip-off Saturday, 6 o'clock tip-off Sunday. I was under the impression that you could not schedule games intentionally that started within 24 hours of each other. I asked someone who works for the Blazers PR department, and they were also unaware of how it works, but the conclusion was, well, it's already happening, so clearly the league is okay with it. Blazers play the Bulls on Sunday evening, and big things happening early on in this one. Denny comes back. DA comes back. Those are two starters. They're going to be in the starting lineup. But Shaedon Sharpe isn't. Scoot Henderson and no Anthony Simons. He got right at the end of that game against the Rockets. He had a right elbow thing that clearly he got bumped on a play. I thought he hit his shoulder earlier in the game. But at the very end of the game, when he went to the bench, he was clearly favoring an arm that he had been favoring during that final quarter, and he did not play in the game on Sunday with an elbow issue. So get two starters back, lose another one. Scoot Henderson slides into the starting 2-guard spot, but surprisingly, Chauncey Billups reveals, because Chauncey Billups is happy to reveal starting lineup prior to games. Good on him. There's no reason to keep those trade secrets. It doesn't matter. That he is going to bring Shaedon Sharpe off the bench, which means that the Blazers are against the reeling Chicago Bulls are going to start Scoot Henderson, Toumani Camara, Denny Avdia, Jeremy Grant, and DeAndre Ayton. Your size with your wings, you're going to play bigger, and you're going to and DA's back in the middle. No Rob Williams because it's the second night of a back-to-back. So off the bench, they went with Jabari Walker, but you're going to or the other option is Duop Reith because Donovan Clingan remains out. It's notable that Shaedon Sharpe's not in the starting lineup because they've kind of committed to him, right? This is the first game all year that this has been the case. I want to clarify here. Shaedon Sharpe did not get benched. Benched implies you did not play. What Shaedon Sharpe got is moved to the bench. He still played. Shaedon Sharpe played 33 minutes off the bench. They played a ton. He just wasn't in the starting lineup. And Chauncey Billups said it was because Sharpe's defense had waned in the last couple of days, and he talked with him, and he wanted him to, sharpen his focus on that end. And because of the shifting lineup, said you're going to move to the bench. I will talk a bunch about this in the third segment. This is a big deal, small deal. This is kind of like either a major thing or a nothing burger, depending on how you want to look at it. And I'll break it down and to close the show. Let's talk about this game. Bulls up 15 in the first quarter and close the quarter up 12. That didn't work. But the Bulls just can't score in the second quarter. They scored 19 points. Blazers rip off a 31-19 quarter, going to the halftime 53-53, and Portland never trailed in the second half. Beat the snot out of them, really. Like, once they took the lead, the Bulls whimpered. They went out with a whimper. Up 10 after 3, and they win 113-102. Chicago never truly threatened in the fourth quarter, and coming off a pretty darn good game against the Rockets, Scoot Henderson, when he has 21 and 11 against Houston, rips off 25 and 8. 25 and 8 against the Bulls. Hello. Shaedon Sharpe off the bench with 23 points. Denny Avdia, he's a real stabilizer, right? Like, they just need him. They need him because his ability just to dribble himself to the rim is something that they just don't have with with their other forward options. Jeremy Grant just isn't as good at it, and Jeremy Grant shoots when he gets in there. Denny shoots a lot when he gets in there too, but he will make plays, and because he's a willing playmaker and because he pushes so much harder than Jeremy Grant in transition, he can just create opportunities even when he is just like going full bore to the rim. They clearly missed Denny Avdia when he was out. He was back, and they looked a whole lot better. The Bulls suck. I mean that with very little respect. That's a bad basketball team. They stink. But here's the thing, y'all. The Blazers played the freaking Nets on Tuesday night and lost by 18 at home. A bad basketball team has not exactly been a thing that the Blazers cakewalk over this year. They lost by 40 points at home to the Jazz. Bad doesn't really mean anything. The other team is bad too. That's how it works. But the Bulls have lost to the Hornets, the Pelicans, and the very, very depleted Hawks. Came in on a 4-game losing streak, make it 5, lose to the Blazers. They're bad. That's a bad basketball team. But the Blazers kind of just handling a bad basketball team in the final 2 quarters of the game because Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe played really well and Denny Avdia helped bring them home with the stabilizing presence that he is. That's good news. Let's talk Let's talk Scoot Henderson, who is unequivocally playing the best basketball of his career. This is the best stretch, probably the best week of Scoot Henderson's season. Save me with your end of his rookie year stuff. Those tanking games are a very different beast than games in January. March basketball in the NBA is a totally different thing than January. This is the best Scoot has been. Let's celebrate it. Let's talk about it. Join me in the second segment. Before we do that, though, let's talk about Prizepicks. It's a great way to get in on real money sports action. We've hit the midpoint of the NBA season, and right now, when you're watching your favorite stars, there's no better way than to have a little bit of fun with real money action than Prizepicks. Whether you're a diehard fan or you just love some friendly competition, Prizepicks makes it fun and easy to turn your basketball knowledge into cash. Here's how it works: pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. You think Scoot Henderson's got another 25 in him? You think Shaedon Sharpe's got another 20 plus and a couple three-pointer night? Well, Prizepicks lets you make your predictions and put your money where your mouth is in just 60 seconds. I've used Prizepicks over the years, and it's a fun little way to quickly get in on some real money action. And plus, they got Prizepicks flex play. So even if one of your picks doesn't hit, even if your knowledge isn't steel, you can still double your money. Plus, when you win, you can get your cash quickly in as little as 15 minutes. It's honestly a great way to keep the game exciting. Now's the perfect time to join. Download the app, use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, no need to win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed. Prizepicks, run your game. All right. Scoot Henderson's hooping. He's hooping. And it's a little bit different than it has felt necessarily in the early start of this week. Let us before we get to the present tense, let's rewind the tape. Last Saturday, a week ago, Scoot Henderson had a stinker against the Heat. 1 of 6 in 21 minutes. Just wasn't very good. It was a bad night for him, and it wasn't even that notable of a bad night. And it was like, yeah, Scoot sucked, huh? Like, and he didn't get to play very much, and he didn't deserve to play very much, and like, dang, it was like, you know, it's notable in that like you want him to play better, right? When you're watching this team, it's like you're well, some of you weirdos are probably actively rooting against Scoot. Go for it, weirdos. But like, you know, he just stunk, right? He just stunk against the Heat. But he's had such a rocky season that it wasn't this game where you like really circle it and be like, well, he had this awful night. Well, I'm like, yeah, he's just normal stinker. Hey, what are you gonna do? Move forward. I barely mentioned the show. Then he has 39 and 6 against the Nets. Holy cow. Hits 8 threes. Holy cow. 25 in the first half when the game was still competitive, like kept them in the game when they were down 5. Then they just like continued to not play any defense and lost. But 39 and 6 is a monster night, right? But it didn't feel that sustainable. Hitting 8 threes is like, you're not going to repeat that, right? Hitting 8 of 10 threes specifically, like when you're not bombing away and taking 17 like crazy modern guards, like it really doesn't feel sustainable. It felt like Scoot had a crazy fun night against the Nets. And I think you can say like, yeah, that was an outlier game, but you can still enjoy outliers, right? But that one didn't feel like, okay, Scoot's got it, right? Scoot's got it. This is a thing he can do again. That felt like I've never seen Scoot do that. Boy, was that enjoyable. Then he had 16 and 6 in a beatdown against the Clippers. Blazers scored 89 points that game. They couldn't score at all, but at least early in the first 2 quarters, Scoot was the Blazers' best player on the court, right? The game went haywire for the Blazers. They got it walloped, but like I think particularly in the opening 2 quarters, I think Scoot was their best player, and so that felt a little different. It was like back to back games. Scoot has probably been their best player on the court. Then, you know, he moves to the bench. Guys get healthy, they come back, and he has 21 and 11 against the Rockets. And he felt, again, like their best player on the court. And that one felt a little bit different because that didn't feel like a hot shooting night or a game against the Nets where it's like, well, this is a weird open gym game. The Rockets are an elite defensive team. Like, they have a bunch of very good defenders. They have a bunch of length. They might not have like the premier rim protector, but like the way they use Şengün allows him to be, they like basically do a really good job of keeping him out of pick and rolls by putting him on non-shooters. He guarded Toumani Camara a fair amount. They like hide him, right? So he can be a help guy and a low man mostly. And like the Rockets are a really, really good defensive team. And Scoot with 21-11 against Houston. It's like, this feels different. He gets to the free throw line. He doesn't make an outlandish number of threes against Houston, right? Like, he shot well off the bench, 3 of 5, but like, it's not a crazy volume of attempts. Like, yeah, maybe like a normal night he makes 2 out of 5, but it didn't feel like a crazy game. If Scoot has 18-11 against the Rockets, it's like whatever. And I'm calling a normal night of Scoot shooting 40% from 3, but I'm just like in terms of if you're talking about like an outlier shooting game, making 2 out of 5 threes is not an outlier shooting game for anybody. It's just like, oh, that one went in. But he makes 3 out of 5 threes. He had missed some layups in that game. There was some stuff he left on the table, all those things. But it's like that one felt pretty normal. He gets to the free throw line 6 times. Like that's a thing you can do again. And then he comes out against the Bulls, and he has a monster first half, like 13-4. It's like if Scoot had a game a couple weeks ago where he had 13-4, you'd be like, Scoot had a good night. You'd be like, we would talk about it, right? We would talk about Scoot Henderson having a good night. But he has 25-8. 25-8. It's just freaking good. Since that stinker against Miami, over the following week, 4 games, he's averaging 25.3 points, 7.8 assists, shooting 56.9% from the floor, including 16 of 30 from 3. You say, Mike, well, he had a 8 of 10 night. Fine, take that away. Say that's an outlier game, a weird game. Say we take your best game away. It's not how stats work, but let's do it. He's 8 of 20 from 3. He's shooting 40% from 3 over the week. He hasn't had weeks like this. This is the best he's playing. Let's also be super, super clear about this. Scoot still has some problems. He missed some layups against Houston. He's turned the ball over with some regularity in these games, 3 and 4 turnover nights pretty consistently. But you're talking about where this guy came from when having consecutive nights of 21-11, 25-8 is like huge banner stuff. And it feels, unlike the game against Brooklyn, it felt like, oh, that's a fun game, but how's he going to do that again? These games where, again, he takes 6 free throws against the Rockets, and he comes back against the Bulls and takes 8 free throws. Gets himself to the free throw line. He's making threes, right? 3 of 8 from 3 against Houston, or excuse me, 3 of 5 from 3 against Houston, 3 of 8 from 3 against Chicago. It's like, yeah, he's making threes, so maybe he'll cool down a little bit, right? But the get himself where he needs to go, draw fouls, make plays for others. He's not perfect, but enough good stuff, very good and obvious stuff to feel like he could do this again. Is he going to be a 20 and 10 guy here on out? Probably not, right? Like I would bet against it, but it won't feel as weird if he does. It won't feel as outliery because of the way he has played this week. This looks like a guy turning the corner, and you map this on top of what he's been like probably over the last month, 3 weeks or so, where he's like clearly playing better basketball. And I would say for the first time in Scoot Henderson's career, you can say, yeah, he's been good. And you could even say this week, he's been the Blazers' best player. That has straight up never been the case in his career. That's huge. That is a huge step forward. What Scoot has been like this week has been, I would describe, I'm saying he has some warts, right? Because I want to be clear about what he is. What he looks like this week is a good young point guard. Young still with some decision-making, like weirdness, young with like some, he can force stuff. Maybe he's, he even, some of the threes he missed against the Bulls, wide open, unguarded, wide open threes, right? But instead of looking like, is this dude an NBA player? Like, is it, because there's some times when Scoot has been really bad where it's like, how is he going to stick here, right? And I would think this week, even with his warts, it's been like, Scoot can do some stuff. How can they continue to let this thing blossom? And the answer is like, obviously, that they should have cleared the path for him to play more minutes and given him more keys to the rock, like in freaking February of last year, or at least in July, but they chose not to do that. And it gets a little messy because like now Scoot starting and, he played 30 minutes tonight with no Henry Simons, and in the game against Houston where Ant did play, he got 31 minutes off the bench for Scoot. And it's like, he kind of needs to play 30 plus a night. You need to stop messing around. You can't have a 24-minute night Scoot anymore. What's the point? Which kind of leads me into the Shaedon Sharpe coming off the bench thing. In and of itself, I don't actually have that big a problem with it, but it speaks to a larger challenge looming on the horizon. Let's talk about that to close the show, because Shaedon Sharpe came off the bench and he was good. But he didn't start the game, and it was for very specific struggles that he has had right in front of our eyes. Join me in the third segment. We'll talk all about it. First, though, let's talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. The NFL playoffs are here. In fact, I watched the NFL playoffs today. They've come and gone, but they'll be back next week. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel can make the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is super easy to navigate, and they've got a variety of bets to keep every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or your favorite team has been dismissed, summarily sent home, and just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs in the remaining couple weeks of the NFL season, postseason that is, just visit FanDuel.com because they've got you covered. And you can join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, still a pass first point guard, still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers, and we are talking about Shaedon Sharpe. Chauncey Billups told the assembled media prior to the game against the Chicago Bulls that Shaedon Sharpe's coming off the bench. And he was coming off the bench because he'd struggled on defense, and he needed to refocus. And it was because of those struggles that Sharpe was going to the bench. He lost his starting spot due to some struggles on defense. And I will say, against the Clippers, I take notes with a pen and in my notebook. I look at it here right off screen while I'm recording this podcast. There's the notebook. Check it out. And right there in my notes, in the second quarter of that game against the Clippers, I noted that Sharpe got lost on what they call in NBA parlance lock and trail, which is basically like if you're chasing a dude, you want to stay connected to him so you can either contest from behind, or if a guy slows up, hop in front, right? You want to stay connected, lock and trail. This is like a classic coach speak. You don't need coach speak. You just need me to tell you what happened. So Sharpe was chasing Norman Powell from the corner, and Norman Powell comes up and gets a pin down screen. He's in the corner. He gets a screen coming up towards the top of the key, and he's just looping from the corner towards the top of the key, and then he's going to curl to the rim from the top of the key back down. And, so like a big U shape for Norman Powell on a cut, and Shaedon Sharpe is just running behind him at like 80% speed, and Norman Powell catches the ball, and Shaedon Sharpe keeps on jogging, and Norman Powell gets a layup, and they go the other way. And it's like, what the hell was that? It was a moment that I immediately put in my notebook, and it was like, that's a play worth rewatching, because it's just like there was no compete there. He was just playing in the park, like, whoops, good, okay, see you later, bud. I thought he was really bad on defense in that game. That wasn't the only one, but that was the big one that stood out to me. Against Houston, I didn't put in my notebook, and again, I'm perhaps poisoned by being too close to the Blazers, but I thought Sharpe's problems in that particular game were on offense, but I thought some bad decision making on offense. But certainly he struggles on defense. Period. So like if I watched it maybe a little closer, then I probably could pick up on some stuff. But I will note against the Clippers game, like they being Chauncey Billups, pulled Henry Simons and Shaedon Sharpe 2 minutes and 15 seconds into the third quarter, pulled him out of the game. Said, you guys are not playing with the correct amount of energy. So it wasn't just that moment in the second quarter against Norm. It was the whole, it was a continuing trend. And Shaedon Sharpe didn't play that much against Clippers and probably didn't deserve to, right? But it's notable when the sort of young core part doesn't play that much. So Billups sends him to the bench in this game. And I can see this from two views. One, this is what you want. When a player dogs it on defense, particularly a player that you hope is a young player, that is a foundational piece, when they're dogging it and not playing up to their potential and not just like not staying focused on game plan discipline, which is like another coach thing, but like, discipline to the game plan and what the plan is, just not focus on the personnel you're guarding, going through the motions, right? As opposed to like really being locked in on what you are supposed to do and, playing anticipatory basketball. That should have repercussions. There should be repercussions when a young player is dogging it. This is what you want. That's like the job of coaching. You didn't play well. I need to hold you accountable. You're going to come off the bench. You're not going to play any less necessarily, but you're going to come off the bench because this isn't given, it is earned. I'm fine with that. I really am. I'm fine with that. But if you zoom out a little bit, isn't it freaking weird that the Blazers are not just letting Shaedon Sharpe fail? And killing him in behind the scenes, right? Like he plays these games and you just let him start, and you let him start next to Scoot Henderson because you're deeply invested in seeing those two gentlemen play together as much as you possibly can. And if they suck, and if Shaedon Sharpe doesn't play with the sort of requisite energy and requisite focus, you either yank him from the game or you really get after him in film. But again, like if there's no accountability, how do you learn? So I see both. I am fine with it personally, but I can see the sort of bigger picture. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Like, what's the point of this particular team if this happens? And then I hear the other thing that you're saying. You're saying DeAndre Ayton is not held to this standard. Jeremy Grant is not held to this standard. Anthony Simons is not held to this standard. To that I say, you're right. Sure. Yes. To that I say yes. It is a little bit different. Is it fair? No. No one is preaching fair or equality of opportunity or accountability here. I'm saying it's different. Because Shaedon Sharpe is 21 and they want him to develop habits and not be handed whatever he is. And the other dudes are just short timers who are like DeAndre Ayton, they need his minutes. And I think there's a world in which hard coaching DeAndre Ayton, the way that Sharpe was sort of given that a little bit harsher coaching, that might go way further south. And some of the art of coaching is knowing how to coach individual players. You think if you benched DA for Jabari Walker that you would get really good results? I don't. But I think you could say, like, there have been times when Jeremy Grant just takes a million bad shots but still gets to play 37 minutes. Agreed. 100% agreed. Yeah, absolutely. That is a real thing that happens. I don't have, I'm not trying to offer you a reasoning for that. It is what it is. Like, that's how they do it. Is probably bad. But I think the Shaedon Sharpe coming off the bench thing speaks to the larger problem with the whole damn roster. Anthony Simons didn't play in this game. If Ant plays in this game, there is no benching. You're just having a discussion. Do you sit Scoot? Do you sit Shaedon Sharpe? Do you sit Toumani Camara? That's the conversation you're having because, or do you continue to bring Denny off the bench? Does he continue to be Denny off the bench? Continuing to bring Denny off the bench seems bizarre. He's arguably been their best player, and he's obviously moved in the starting lineup. But that's the Jeremy Grant thing, and the availability complicates that. So you move two to the bench. It's fine, but I think that's fine. That's probably the most reasonable. But he's like your best point of attack defender, and maybe your most versatile defender, probably your best overall defender. It's like, it is a team that's pretty bad on defense. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Is what Toumani does valuable in second units the way that what Denny does actually is valuable in second units? I don't know. For me, Denny Avdia is, because of the ball handling, his ability to kind of get his own offense, probably a better fit playing with the second unit. That doesn't make it fair or whatever that he would be the guy that goes to the bench, but you have to make these decisions because of the way the roster still exists. And if Anthony Simons is healthy, he's going to start. He's going to play 32 minutes a night. Like, they're just going to do that until they shut Ant down with a phantom injury at some point in April after not trading him, or in March after not trading him. That was a real, I'm ripping off real hater takes there, but that's what's going to happen. But it is like this, the like bringing Sharpe off the bench is a problem that would have come up regardless if this team was fully healthy and running, because this is what they are. And the way Scoot Henderson is playing, like if they're fully healthy and fully operational, one of the young guards or one of the players who seems to be part of your future core is going to come off the bench behind players that do not seem part of your future core, because that's how, the coach is most comfortable with Jeremy Grant and obviously and Anthony Simons. There's a financial element that is undeniable to it, that it's just like dudes who get paid a lot are going to get more opportunity and a longer leash to prove that they're worth the money. Like that's typically how it works. Not always, but it's often how it works. That's obviously not fair either, but it's like, this is a business and there's investment and all of these things, right? Scoot's hooping. You want him to play a bunch. Shaedon Sharpe responded very well to this. I don't think Shaedon Sharpe's first shift was necessarily great on defense. I thought literally the first time he had to defend, he didn't hustle back in transition defense, and he kind of halfway got in front of Zach LaVine. And it ended up being a deflection out of bounds and nothing really came of it. But it was like Shaedon Sharpe was caught backpedaling as opposed to having his feet set and receiving a guard, like charging down the lane. Instead, he was kind of running with him. It was not great. He had a miscommunication with DeAndre Ayton on a pick and roll coverage that led to a bucket. But it wasn't perfect on defense. But he responded well by I don't think his first half was very good, but then he ended up having a really solid game with freaking, excuse me, I'm on the wrong score, wrong in the box score. He had finished with 23 on 8 of 18 shooting. Like, he was aggressive. He got himself a free throw line for 6 attempts by driving and continuing to draw fouls. The Bulls were a freaking foul machine in the second half. Sharpe took advantage. They let him close down the stretch because he deserved to be on the court because he was one of their 5 best players. Like he said, if I'm going to come off the bench, I'm still going to play the way I play. I'm still going to be productive. And he was. That's what you want. But this thing's just going to get more complicated when everyone's healthy. It's going to get more complicated. The Blazers have finally found themselves a place where, Sharpe had a bad week, but he had a good night tonight. And he's been deserving of the minutes that he's had. And I think he's been pretty solid in terms of being aggressive and playing the way they need him to over the last 6 weeks or so. He's kind of figured it out. Scoot Henderson's playing the best basketball of his life. And the roster doesn't easily allow to play those two gentlemen next to each other and have them play 35 minutes a night. Because it is what it is. And if they do that, they're probably playing a lot of 3-guard lineups, which is going to be compromised defensively and means one of Toumani Camara or Deni Avdija is likely not on the court. I think the larger picture stuff is more alarming about who plays and when than one night where Shaedon Sharpe responded well to coming off the bench. I think the fact that Sharpe responded well is a really good sign. It means that the hard coaching that he received didn't, wear him out or whatever. But everyone wants a chance to play, and if this operation ever gets fully operational, there are less opportunities to play. Which means, as I sit here, you're listening to January 20th show. We're 17 days from the trade deadline. Solve it. Make some decisions that allow this to happen. I don't think they will, right? I have no faith in the Blazers making aggressive moves based on all of their track record and my read of the current NBA trade market. Maybe they will, and some of this will get cleared up. Maybe they won't, and they'll just fake injuries, and that will be how it gets cleared up. That's no good to me, but I think it's very clear now. The way Scoot Henderson is playing, he deserves to play a bunch, and there is no reason for Shaedon Sharpe not to play a bunch, which is backed up by the fact that even when he got moved to the bench, he still played 30-plus minutes. You got to find a way for that to continue, even when everybody is available. That is going to do it for today's show. Blazers on the road this week, heading to Florida, Miami, or now Orlando, and then they head back after a little 3-gamer, and then they're back for an extended run heading into the trade deadline in early February. That's what we do. We'll have you covered 5 days a week wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.